And in the next moment, they scurried down the hill and worked their way from tree to tree as quietly as they could. Franco ran across to the overturned tree Julie had just scaled and began to climb up it. First, he felt around with his hands for good spots in the bark to clutch, and then began gripping the tree with his feet. As he did so, a huge adrenaline surge shot through him. Moving briskly, he reached the top. He stood there for a short moment, steadying himself by waving his arms at his side, watching Julie crawl on her belly along the dirt ground below. He jumped down and followed suit. They moved at a quick pace until they reached the end of the tree line, with the shack not more than 10 or 15 steps ahead of them. Without warning, the door to the shack flew open. Sweat instantly popped out onto Julie's forehead. A portly red-headed guard with a giant butt came oozing out, huffing and puffing as he worked his way to the fire. He picked up a few skewers and eyed them in their red-hot tips. He gripped the handle of his choice skewer, turned, and waddled his fat ass back into the shack. Seconds later, muffled screams met their ears. Julie cocked her gun and ushered Franco toward the window so they could get a better look. They both slithered towards the door. As Franco approached the shack, a strong and horrid memory seized him. He was back at his bookstore, the Cali Crossroad, and he was kneeling behind the counter. Gunshots ripped through the glass window. Fear ripped his throat all over again. Goosebumps began to play games up and down his arms, and the hair on the back of his neck stood on end. Franco crawled on his belly towards the shack anyway, doing just as Julie was doing, not stopping until his ear was pressed against the wall beneath the solitary window. He sat there motionless, waiting for Julie to make the first move. Franco was frozen, staring at Julie with wide eyes. She was cautious but fearless. She raised her head to take a peek. The sight that met her eyes was a terrifying one. There was one guard holding the prisoner's head while the other guard held the man's tongue with forceps and slowly cut it with a large, rusty cleaver. The red-hot skewer had already been shoved through the prisoner's leg and was left in like a fork for a cooked roast. Once the tongue was cut in half, the guard who had been slicing snorted one loud laugh. This man took a look at his prize in the grip of his forceps, then flung the piece of red flesh to the ground. Both guards gripped their bellies and cackled. Julie had seen enough. The victim's identity was as clear as the tiger tattoo on his belly and the Arsalanga tattoo on his high chest. It was Abdul. She sat down as dots swam in front of her vision like wayward jellyfish.
Holy fuck, Franco. It's Abdul. We've got to help him.
Franco looked Julie straight in the eyes and shook his head no. Apparently he wasn't about to risk his life for someone he thought of as a smart-mouthed gangster.
I'm just gonna set up the charges. We need to score those vehicles, but we don't need him.
Julie grabbed Franco by the throat and hissed back.
Listen, you're a good guy, but you can be a real dick sometimes. Since you're so fucking scared, you can be responsible for the bomb. I'll save my friend.
She loosened her grip slightly to keep Franco from turning purple. He gasped.
Go out into the woods and set it off. This should get those guys to come running. I'll try to take both of them out.
She paused and let go of Franco's neck and took a precautionary look back through the window. The guards were beating Abdul's wounded body with open palms.
Once you set off the bomb, try to work your way back here in case I don't shoot both of them straight off.
Franco nodded, rubbed his neck and Adam's apple with his right hand, then turned and scurried away like a lizard. Julie followed for a short distance, then turned a quick left and took cover behind a tree that wasn't too far away from the shack's entrance. She could see Franco's shadow amongst the trees running away from her. Then the shadow stopped. 5 seconds. 10 seconds.
What the hell? Do you like the fucking thing or what?
Then the image of their whitewater adventure came to mind.
Oh God,
Julie thought.
They're too wet.
30 seconds. 35. Julie kept her head down for an extra second to make sure she didn't get hit by any flying shrapnel. Her ears were ringing, but her nose was working overtime. She could smell her own sweat mixed with the scent of pine and smoke. She popped her head out from behind the tree just in time to see the door fly open and one of the patrolmen storm out. Julie steadied her hand on the bark and waited until both men were in clear view before squeezing the trigger. She didn't wait to see the bullet make contact with the first guy. She retargeted in the next instant and fired her second shot. This one she plainly saw hit her opponent's head, causing blood to spurt all over the man's face. But the first shot must have been a miss, because a second later, she heard the return of automatic fire. Julie ducked back behind her cover. From her new low position, she saw Franco standing with his back against the tree to her left. As she watched him, he grabbed a gun from his backpack and turned towards the enemy with what she thought looked like tears in his eyes. She watched as Franco closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then let out a howl and began running towards the shack, guns blazing. Julie couldn't believe it. This moron was going to get himself killed. To her surprise, there was no response to Franco's fire. When Franco's clip ran out and she heard the clink of his empty gun, Julie knew for certain that they were victorious. Franco stood over the body with a gaping mouth. No tears as the Franco Leon she first met might have produced, just an eerie look in his eyes. "I think I caught him off guard," he said. Julie walked up behind Franco and gently put her arm around his shoulders. "War is disturbing, isn't it? You never really feel like you win."
"I never killed anyone before."
"I know it's hard, but look at it this way. You're my hero now," Julie said with another one of her winning smiles. He deserved it. "Come on, Franco, this is war. For the soldier, there can be no right or wrong, real or fake. There's only dead or alive. Until you understand that and come to terms with it, you'll always feel guilty and scared."
"My God, Julie, how old are you? You look 19, but you act like you're much older and wiser than I am."
"Just when it comes to fighting," she winked at him. "Let's get moving, my friend. You know this place is going to be swarming with patrolmen any minute." The inside of the shack stank of burnt flesh and hair. The room was dimly lit and the floor was covered in blood. Not all of the blood was fresh. It seemed torture was a major function for this secluded highway shack. Franco stood there motionless in total shock. Abdul's face was so puffed and swollen, his eyes were almost completely obscured by flesh. His mouth was oozing blood, and his moaning was quiet but agonizing. Julie lovingly removed Abdul's binds and whispered comforting words to him. "You're going to be okay, Abdul." If they didn't get somewhere quick with medical facilities, he was sure to die, but she whispered all the same. "Get his legs," Julie demanded of Franco. "When we're done, go look for the keys while I bandage him up a bit."
"Will he live?"
Franco asked as if on autopilot. "Dunno," Julie replied as she cut the rope that had bound Abdul's feet. After looking for about a minute, Franco found the keys hanging on the back wall.
"Got it."
Julie and Franco eased Abdul into the truck that Franco had pulled closer to the door of the shack. Once he was secure, Julie looked at Franco with tired eyes. Next stop, the city made a mountain. Once they reached the top of the hill, their eyes fell upon a village of log and mud houses nestled in the bosom of a small mountain. Never had Franco seen anything remotely like this, not even in the most exotic magazines or travel brochures.
"Techno hippies."
Franco could see feelings of joy wash the signs of pain from Julie's face as she said this.
"Really? I can't believe it. That's how they live? Paradise,"
Franco said in amazement. The two of them got out of the vehicle and left Abdul lying in the back. Franco wasn't sure if the poor man was unconscious or just stationary due to grief and pain, but he chose not to think too much about it, lest it make him sick to his stomach. Julie stood looking over the motionless city. "Okay, I'm going to call out the techno-hippie salutation so they don't freak out and think we're Middleian trespassers." Julie cupped her hands around her mouth and yelled at the top of her lungs. "Chinkrati! Chinkrati!" As her call echoed back from the mountain face, people slowly emerged from the village and huts below.
"Strange," Franco thought. "Those closest to the mountain have actually built their homes into the rock."
3 riders on horseback appeared out of nowhere and rode out from behind the crowd that was forming. The riders approached at full speed and Franco panicked. He grabbed hold of Julie's arm while simultaneously trying to back away. Julie held her ground. "It's a test. If we run, they'll think we're spies and shoot us down." Franco stopped tugging at her. She was, after all, far more in touch with the workings of this war and these people. In moments, the riders were right on top of them and working their horses up onto 2 feet in a show of bravery. They circled the newcomers with wrinkled brows and frowns on their mouths. The horses were glorious creatures. 2 of them had flawless, dark brown coats. The other one was a bright white with spots. Their large bodies and strong muscular legs were thumping and shaking the ground as they trotted past Julie and Franco. The 2 riders on solid brown horses were men in their early 30s, and the other was a woman, probably in her 50s. They all wore long robes with superbly detailed patterns. All 3 held 6-foot spears and small guns attached to their belts. Franco could see tassels coming down from the sleeves of the men, and little coins and rhinestones attached to the woman's belt that made her look like a warrior belly dancer. She spoke first.
"Pulcherti colama, ad Arvestia."